Hey everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be talking all about autonomous equipment and how it's changing, well, everything. Not just the industries using it, but how we even pay for it.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time to be looking at this stuff.
We're basing today's deep dive on a really cool article.
Oh, yeah.
It's called The Future of Autonomous Equipment and Financing Implications from The Rate Card. Just came out today, December 14th, 2024.
Nice. Very up to date.
We're going to try to cover, I guess, the main points,
Mm-hmm.
where the technology is at right now, today, and then look ahead to where things are going. It's not all rosy. There are some big challenges.
Definitely. Some things to keep in mind for sure.
Especially for the finance folks. How do you put a price tag on a self-driving truck, right?
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling.
Absolutely, yeah.
This article talks about autonomous vehicles being used in all sorts of fields now. Trucking, construction, even agriculture. I mean, this isn't science fiction anymore. It's happening right now.
Right. And it's interesting to see how different companies are approaching it. For example, you've got companies like Embark going all in on self-driving trucks.
Yeah, I remember when that was just an idea. Now they're out there. I mean, not everywhere, but they're on the roads.
They're addressing a real need, too, With the driver shortage and everything, this
Yeah.
could be a game changer. Plus, it could make the whole supply chain more efficient.
Imagine that, driverless trucks all over the place.
That's a wild thought. But yeah, like you said, there are some big hurdles. The article mentions, regulations. The costs of these things are astronomical.
Yeah, and then there's just people being a bit, I don't know, wary of robots doing human jobs,
Yeah, that's understandable.
It makes you wonder, is this tech really about replacing people entirely? I mean, is that where we're headed?
It's a good question. I think the article argues that it's not necessarily about replacing people, but more about filling in the gaps, where there just aren't enough workers. Like construction. Built Robotics is doing some really cool stuff with robots that can do excavation and things like that.
It's almost like robots are stepping in where humans are already missing and maybe making those jobs safer in the process. So, all right, what's making all this possible? Like, why is this autonomous revolution happening now? The article mentions a few key trends, right?
Right. One of the biggest is just the convergence of all these different technologies. You've got artificial intelligence, advanced sensors, 5G. They're all coming together to make this possible.
Okay, but how does all that fancy tech actually change things in the real world? I mean, what does it do?
Well, think about it. Now you have these machines that can operate in really complex environments. They're making decisions in real time based on all the data they're gathering. And they can even communicate with each other.
So it's not just about the robot. It's about the robot being super smart, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means huge leaps forward in terms of efficiency, safety, you name it.
That makes sense. I mean, it can't just be about replacing workers. There has to be more to it. It's almost like, the article mentions labor shortages as a driving factor. I know it's hard to find skilled workers these days. It's a real problem.
It is. And this technology can help fill those gaps.
Yeah.
Those really specific tasks that are hard to fill. It helps businesses keep going, keep being productive, even if they can't find enough people.
All right, that makes the whole thing make a lot more sense. But okay, let's get to the heart of it, the money. How is all this how do we even pay for this stuff? These machines must be crazy expensive.
They are. The article talks about the high upfront cost being one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah.
But it also makes the argument that these machines can actually save money in the long run.
Oh, okay. So you're saying it's more about looking at the big picture, the long term?
Yeah. Think about reduced labor costs, better fuel efficiency, fewer mistakes, which means less downtime, maybe even fewer accidents.
Yeah, that makes sense. But even so, how do you put a price tag on, say, a self-driving truck? It's not like buying a regular truck, is it?
Definitely not. That's where the traditional ways of valuing things start to break down. We're not just talking about a hunk of metal that depreciates over time. You have to consider the software, the AI, the possibility of updates, and even the risk that it becomes obsolete.
So it's like trying to value, I don't know, like a smartphone, technology that changes all the time.
Perfect analogy. And that's a real headache for lenders. How do you assess the risk of giving someone a loan for this? On top of that, there's all the uncertainty around regulations. The rules around self-driving stuff are still being written.
So it's like, what do they call it? The Wild West of finance, a whole new world with a whole bunch of new problems. But the article did talk about some exciting opportunities too, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are some really interesting financing models popping up, like usage-based pricing. So instead of buying the equipment outright, you could pay per hour or per mile of use.
Like a subscription service, kind of.
Exactly. And that could be a real game changer for smaller businesses that might not be able to afford to buy this stuff outright.
Makes a lot of sense. Opens it up to a lot more people. And the other thing the article mentioned was all the data these machines generate. It's a lot, right?
Oh, yeah, tons of data. Think about it. They're collecting data on their usage, their performance, their maintenance needs, and that's gold for lenders. They can use it to get a much better picture of the risks, make more accurate credit assessments, maybe even customize financing solutions for specific clients.
So it's not just about the robot itself, but about all the information it's constantly spitting out. That's pretty cool.
Really cool. And it could change the whole financing landscape. We're just starting to scratch the surface of what's possible.
Okay, so we've got the technology, the challenges, and some of the potential benefits. But what about the people involved? I mean, what do businesses need to do to get ready for this world where robots are everywhere?
The article stresses the need for companies to build up their expertise. You need people who really understand this stuff inside and out. They need to be able to deal with the complexity of valuing software. They need to be able to understand the risks. And of course, they need to see the opportunities.
So invest in the right people. That's step one. What else?
Well, companies also need to update all their systems, their risk assessment models. The old ways just aren't going to cut it anymore.
Because software gets outdated so fast.
Exactly. And they need to incorporate new factors like cybersecurity threats, all the changing regulations. It's a whole new ballgame.
It's like they need to upgrade their risk assessment software alongside their equipment. What about the data side of things? All that information the machines are generating, what do they do with all that?
They need to be able to handle it, right? Upgrade their IT infrastructure to manage all that data, analyze it, extract insights, even integrate it with their partners' systems. Data management is key.
So it's about more than just the robots. It's about building a whole digital world to support them. But the article also talked about collaboration, right? Working together.
Absolutely. Companies need to build strategic partnerships to really succeed in this space. There are 3 key areas to focus on. Working with the folks who are building the robots, that's the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, and the technology providers, the insurtech companies, because figuring out insurance for a self-driving truck is a whole new challenge. And then industry alliances, so companies can share knowledge, maybe even influence the way regulations are written.
So strength in numbers, basically. Let's shift gears a little bit and look ahead. What's next? What does the article say about where all this is going in the next decade?
Well, they predict that we'll see widespread adoption of autonomous equipment across a lot of different industries. It will become, the standard way of doing things in areas like construction, agriculture, and logistics.
So we're talking about a real tipping point where this tech goes mainstream. That's huge.
It is huge. And it means the way we value things will have to get a lot more sophisticated. Lenders will need to come up with new ways to assess the value of these machines because so much of it depends on software and data that's constantly changing.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it. The article also mentioned integrated financing ecosystems. I'm not even sure what that means. What are those and how do they fit into this future?
These ecosystems are basically a complete solution. It's not just about getting a loan for a piece of equipment. Imagine getting the equipment, the software, maintenance, insurance, data analytics, all bundled together.
Wow, so it's like a one-stop shop for all things autonomous.
Yeah, exactly. It could make it a lot easier for businesses to adopt this tech without having to figure everything out on their own.
That's really interesting, but we'll have to dig into that more after a quick dive. When we come back, we'll talk more about these integrated financing ecosystems and what they mean for businesses and lenders. So these integrated financing ecosystems, it sounds futuristic.
Yeah, it's a pretty big shift in how we think about financing. Instead of just like getting a loan for a piece of equipment, these ecosystems try to offer a complete solution. So you're not just getting, say, the autonomous equipment, but also the software, the maintenance, even insurance.
So it's not just the hardware, it's everything that makes it work, right?
Exactly. Makes things a lot easier for businesses. They can focus on, actually using the equipment, not on managing all the different pieces.
It's like a turnkey solution for going autonomous. But are there any downsides? I mean, it sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, one thing to think about is vendor lock-in. If you go with a fully integrated ecosystem, you're basically tied to that one provider for everything. So if you want to switch things up later on, it might be tricky.
So it's like a trade-off between convenience and flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. Businesses will have to weigh those factors carefully.
Makes sense. But let's get back to the financial side of things. The article also hinted at something called outcome-based financing. What is that?
It's a pretty radical idea. Instead of paying for the equipment itself, you're paying for what it actually produces, the outcomes. So, for example, a construction company might pay based on how much earth an excavator moves, not for the excavator itself.
Wow, so you're paying for results, not the thing itself.
Exactly. Could be attractive for businesses that maybe aren't sure about the long-term value of this tech.
But how would lenders adapt to this? It seems like a huge change for them.
It would be. They need to really understand their clients' businesses, what are they trying to achieve, and then assess the risks and rewards based on those outcomes, not just the value of the equipment.
So it's almost like lenders would become partners in their clients' success. That's interesting. But all this tech, it's going to have a big impact on workers, right? I mean, what happens to people's jobs?
That's a tough question. It'll depend on the industry, the specific jobs, Some jobs will definitely be lost, but others will be created. The important thing is to focus on retraining, giving people the skills they need to adapt.
So it's not just about robots taking over, it's about humans and robots working together in new ways.
Exactly. And we need to make sure people have the support to make that transition.
That makes sense. We talked earlier about autonomous equipment being good for the environment. How does that work exactly?
Well, they often use electric or hybrid powertrains, so that's lower emissions right there. Plus, they can operate more precisely, less wasted fuel, and fewer accidents, less traffic congestion. All of that is good for the environment.
So it's not just about robots doing cool stuff, it's about robots doing cool stuff that's good for the planet. But how does that tie back to financing?
Well, think about sustainable investing. Investors are looking for companies that are doing good, right? And lenders who finance these green technologies, they're going to be more attractive to those investors.
So it's good for business, it's good for the environment, it's win-win. But with all this new tech, there have to be some risks we haven't thought of yet, right?
Of course, any new technology has its risks. For example, as these machines get more complex, cybersecurity becomes a bigger issue. We need to make sure they're secure, protected from hackers.
That's a good point. And what about the ethical side of things? Like, who's responsible when a self-driving truck makes a mistake? How do we make sure this technology is used responsibly?
Those are the big questions we need to figure out as a society. We need ethical guidelines, regulations, all of that to make sure we're using this technology for good, not just because we can.
It's a good reminder that technology is just a tool, and how we use it is up to us. We'll need to think about the potential consequences and make sure we're using it to build the future we want. All right, welcome back. I feel like my head is spinning a little bit. We've covered so ground. Self-driving trucks, robots building things, all this crazy financing stuff.
It is a lot to take in, for sure. We've gone from what's happening right now to, how we pay for it and even the impact on jobs, the environment, everything.
It's mind-blowing. But, okay, let's try to bring it back down to earth. What does all this mean for our listeners? I mean, what can you actually do to get ready for this future where autonomous machines are everywhere?
Well, I'd say, first and foremost, stay informed. This is a field that's changing so fast. Read the industry news, follow the experts, maybe even go to some conferences if you can.
Yeah, don't just sit back and let it all wash over you. Think about what you're reading, Question things, try to connect the dots. What's the bigger picture here?
Exactly. It's not enough to just know the facts. You need to understand why they matter, what they could lead to.
And don't limit yourself to your own little corner of the world. If you're in finance, don't just focus on the finance stuff, right? Learn about the technology, the industries it's affecting, the ethical questions it raises. The more you know, the better prepared you'll be.
Totally agree. This isn't just about robots. It's about a whole new way of doing things, a whole new way of thinking.
Which brings me to my next point. Never stop learning. The skills we need today might be totally different tomorrow. So stay curious, be adaptable, and keep learning new things. It's the only way to keep up.
Absolutely. Being able to learn, to adapt, to pick up new skills, that's going to be essential in a world where automation is changing everything.
And don't be afraid to experiment, to take some risks, Try things out, see what works. This is a brand new field. There's no rule book. The people who succeed are going to be the ones who aren't afraid to try, to fail, and to learn from their mistakes.
That's the spirit. It's that kind of thinking that's going to drive innovation. And remember, it's not just about you succeeding. It's about making the world a better place. How can we use this technology to solve the big problems, to create a better future for everyone?
We've talked a lot about the good stuff, the potential benefits, but what about the downsides? What are some of the risks we need to be thinking about?
Well, the impact on jobs is a big one, obviously. Some jobs are going to disappear as things get automated. We need to think about how to retrain those workers, how to create new opportunities for them.
Yeah, and it's not just about losing jobs, it's about making sure everyone benefits from this technology, not just a few people. We don't want to end up with even bigger inequality.
Right, that's a really important point. Technology doesn't automatically make things better for everyone. We need to work to make sure it does.
And then there are the ethical questions, right? Like, what happens if a self-driving car causes an accident? Who's to blame? How do we protect people's privacy when these machines are collecting so much data? These are tough questions, but we need to answer them.
Absolutely. We need to think about ethics, about regulation. It's not just about what we can do, it's about what we should do. What's the right thing to do?
It's about making sure that we're in control of technology, that it's serving us, not the other way around. So I guess to wrap things up, I want to leave you with a few key takeaways. Stay curious, keep learning, don't be afraid to question things. The world is changing fast and we need to be ready for it. Be flexible, be adaptable, and be open to new ideas. And most importantly, remember that we're all in this together. The future is what we make it, so let's make it a good one. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of autonomous equipment.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Keep exploring this stuff. Keep thinking about it. The future is full of possibilities, and it's up to us to make them happen.